this month on collaborating with K through 12 schools. We have two terrific presenters today, Catherine Wyatt of the Library of Virginia and Julie Daniels of the New York State Archives will be speaking to us. And I am now going to turn it over to Shelley Thompson, the chair of the program committee, to get us started. Shelley?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, good. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm going to introduce Julie, Catherine, and give you a little bit of biographical information on both of them. So Catherine is the Senior Education and Programs Coordinator for the Library of Virginia. Catherine is responsible for the development, coordination, and implementation of educational resources and public programming at the library, including the library's online educational resources for K-12 students, teachers, and the general public, a variety of public programming aimed at various audiences over in-person and distance learning platforms, and grant-funded programming. She also develops and maintains the department's social media presence and website and promotes the library's resources at state and national conferences. Catherine has knowledge of and experience in the field of history and humanities education, especially for K-12 students, teachers, lifelong learners, and the general public. Prior to coming to the Library of Virginia, she served as history instructor at Rice University, and she worked in the public history field at Drayton Hall, Fort Sumter National Monument, and Henricus Historical Park. I'm not sure I said that right. And now Julie, I think I'll just go ahead and introduce Julie as well. Julie Daniels is the coordinator of educational programs for the New York State Archives. She administers the K-12 educational programs at New York State Archives, including a statewide Student Research Award program for students in grades 4 through 12. She promotes and manages grants for the educational use of local government records, oversees the development of document-based educational websites, and develops and presents state and national workshops for educators. In addition, Julie performs reference duties on Saturdays, coordinates the Archives Annual Awards Luncheon and Ceremony, and curates the Archives History Happened Here exhibit that's located in NYS Thruway travel plazas across the state. Julie is a trained archivist, records manager, and certified to teach grades 7 to 12 social studies. Wow, you guys are, I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say today about this topic. So without any further introduction, you guys take it away. I'm not sure who's going first, but go for it. Catherine or Julie, are you there? Catherine, are you having trouble with your audio? Julie, do you want to step in and start your presentation, and when we get Catherine's audio figured out, we can get her presentation underway?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Give me just 1 second to switch back over.
Okay.
All right. Can go ahead and advance the slides when you're ready.
Okay. I'm not seeing the top slide yet.
Can you advance them one, and then it should be.
There we go. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Let me give you some background first about the New York State Archives. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we do what we do and how we do it and who we collaborate with. The New York State Archives is actually a part of the New York State Education Department. We're in what's called the Office of Cultural Education, and the State Museum, the State Library, and the State Archives fall under that umbrella. It's interesting because it was just announced today at a staff meeting that as of this Saturday, the New York State Archives will be 45 years old. Basically, Governor Rockefeller signed the legislation in 1971 to create the State Archives, and then we, in fact, opened our doors in 1978 to the public. And I'm getting a lot of feedback here. Hello. There we go. The New York State Archives manages, maintains, makes accessible, preserves state government records. We have a state library that holds manuscripts and special collections, and the museum, of course, objects. We are responsible for the state government records, and over 200 million records is what we say, and of course nobody's counted, but we're pretty close with that. The interesting thing is, and what is important not only about the state records, but the fact that we have these statewide advisory and grant programs, is that all of this impacts how we work with teachers and students. And with the statewide services, we provide them to local governments and to historical records repositories, and basically trying to help them manage their holdings and make them accessible, and also to preserve them. We have a staff of 70. Since there were 2 retirement incentives a number of years ago, we have really declined in staff. We're now starting to hire again. And I actually consider myself an almost full-time educator. I actually have other duties as well, but mostly it's education. We're Monday through Saturday hours, and also a big impact on collaborating with schools and teachers and students is the fact that we have our not-for-profit private side of the State Archives called the Archives Partnership Trust. And they are able to go out and find private support from foundations, corporate grants, all sorts of ways to support some of the education programs that we hope to put on. And a number of the different corporations that actually have supported our education programs and projects include Verizon, JP Morgan Chase, Littauer, Time Warner, Hearst, and even a private not-for-profit organization, the New Netherland Institute, have all helped to contribute to our offerings. And just so that you know a little bit more about the government records that we hold, some of those series that we find teachers really do like. One are our Erie Canal records. And it was a project that was done by the state of New York. It was the first large project the state undertook. And in fact, we've got more than 5 million records related to the construction and maintenance of the Erie Canal and then the barge canal that followed. We also have another interesting series of factory investigation records. And this commission was put together after the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire. And in fact, that same year, the New York State Capitol fire happened as well. And the commission went around and investigated factories, and the documents and visual materials from that are fantastic. And then we have a Division of Visual Instruction records, and they're actually visual. And the New York State Education Department, between the years of about 1880 and 1940, used to distribute glass lantern slides to schools. They had a catalog, and they could order different topics and teachers' guides. But this really was how students were able to kind of see pictures of not only their own state, but also of the world. And so these glass plate negatives, all 17,000 of them, are now in the state archives and are still wonderful teaching tools. But I'm going to say here, one of the things that we also really do, and this is where it connects with that statewide services, is that even though we have these millions of records at the state archives, one of our goals is to really get these teachers and students to look in their own communities. And so we really encourage them to find historical records wherever they can and use those. We, of course, have digital records online. They can come here, but in fact, it's just so much more convenient and perhaps even more interesting to find something that has a local connection. When collaborating with the schools, of course, we have the umbrella organization of the State Education Department. And what's interesting is, as you all probably know, our education departments are establishing standards and now what they call curriculum frameworks that guide teachers in what they teach at different levels and in different disciplines. So what we do is basically adopt those same standards and frameworks, and we make sure that anything that we develop corresponds to those standards and frameworks that the teachers are already working with. So we know that what we're developing really is going to be taught in 4th grade or 8th grade or 11th. And one of the things that we do in collaboration with teachers is involve them in pretty much everything that we create. And the reason, well, primary reason is it's their profession, and they know really what they need in their classrooms. And so we can work with them, and they can actually help us by interpreting the standards for us and helping us to apply what's developed to those standards and hopefully increase their potential use in the classroom. The history of the State Archives actually working with teachers and students goes back to about 1981. So basically 3 years after the doors were open to the public. And that was through Kathleen Rowe and her work with developing 2 publications, and then there was also a document packet. And that kind of got things started. And there were teacher trainings and then also a lot of trainings that dealt with working with other cultural organizations to kind of tell them about how to use their resources with educators. We also, at that point, were very attuned to what was going on with the National Archives and their teaching with documents, products, and trainings. And then there was a pause in the history of our doing education, and that, I think, was primarily because we were so new that we needed to get work done in-house. And so we really didn't get back to looking at education and thinking about it till about the early 1990s when new programs were thought of and implemented, and I'll get into those in a minute. But one of the reasons why we look at education as something that's a priority, and it's kind of interesting, is that it's actually not a component of our mission statement. However, we are under the Education Department, so that makes sense. But I think that as archivists, I think I know that when you're looking at these records and you see the content and you go, this is somebody's voice or perspective on a historical topic, and it's fascinating. They were there and witnessing this. And then you think about all your years that you spent in school and you go, oh my goodness, why couldn't we have had these resources? And so it just all makes so much sense to try to make these materials accessible for use with education. And I think that's really what spurs us on for the most part, is that we know it's the right thing to do. It's also looking at them and realizing that not only do they fit into a history classroom, but that they're interdisciplinary and they can fit into science and math and English and health classes. And the fact that they're real and it's someone's real voice shining through. And I think that one of the biggest things for students is that in many cases you can find the right document. There will be emotion, and the voice will be engaging, and it will pull them right into a feeling of being present during a historical time period or an event or somehow relating to the person who's writing. And we basically, in a way, have a philosophy as well on how we deal with education and teachers and students. We have never really had staff to be able to kind of open up a place physically here to constantly have people coming and going, classes and groups and doing education programs. So we felt that the best way we could reach down to students was through the teachers. And so teacher training has been basically one of our big focal points. And then with that, we actually really try to see if we can't get those teachers to go back to their districts and mentor other teachers. There also was a time when I first started doing the education work in the early 90s, when out I went with teachers to kind of mingle and see what was going on and how things were going. And it was interesting because they won't hold back on their opinions. And they basically looked at me and said, you know, we really want to hear from you, but we'd rather hear what you've got to say through a teacher. Because they said a teacher knows how we're doing in the classroom, what our needs are, how materials fit into our day. And I came back to the archives with that information, and in fact, we've had that guide us ever since. And so as I go through describing our programs, you'll see that in fact, we try to integrate teachers and have their voices loud and clear, mentoring other teachers in just about everything that we do. We also hold focus groups periodically to pick the brains of the teachers. What do you need from us? What are the obstacles that keep you from using historical records? And then we try to make sure, again, that every project involves teachers. And one of the things that we're really honing in on now, and I think the Common Core standards have pushed us this way a lot, is skill development. So we're trying to teach using the records not only historical content, but also analysis, comparing and contrasting perspectives, that sort of thing. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do. And again, to teachers, we're always telling them it doesn't matter whose records you use, just use historical records. One of the biggest, sometimes obstacles for us is communication with schools and teachers. We use library media specialists a lot. We can send them mailings and contact them. We can access them through their school library system directors. We use the New York State Education Department's email and mailing lists. We also have in New York State teacher centers that will have regions that include the school districts, and they have listservs, so we'll go through and use those. And then we make presentations at teacher professional development conferences, locally, state, and nationally, trying to get to them, but it's very difficult to kind of get down to too far in the levels. Here's sort of a little bit of a list of some of the things we do. We're very flexible. People want to propose something new way to work with us. We can work with them. I'll go through some of these topics in just a second, but I wanted to point out National History Day. We are involved. We partner with the State Museum to carry on or carry out the regional competition, and we at the archives are responsible for recruiting the judges, and as often as we can, we try to get teachers involved, local historians, archivists, curators, but again, we really try to get some of the teachers because we hope that they'll see how to do this and then they'll be able to share it with their students and get them involved as well. With students, this in fact kind of goes for teachers as well. We have teachers come in as researchers. They're treated as a regular researcher in the research room. Every once in a while, if someone finds out they're a teacher, they'll call me. I'll come up and talk to them for a bit. But with students, they too can come in as a researcher. If they're under 18, we like them to have an adult with them. And often it's usually in conjunction with a National History Day project if they're going to be doing actual real research. Otherwise, we have field trips that do come in, but I must say we only usually get maybe 3 or 4 a year. We have not advertised this as an option for them, but if anyone calls, we do accommodate them and generally have I mean, it just works out really well. I think because we're not always doing these, we get pretty excited about having them come in, and we will work directly with the teacher or teachers to align what it is that they're doing in the classroom with what they're going to have as an experience at the archives, whether it's the topic, the skills, something that will make it so that it's not just a fun visit. We hope it is fun, but we also hope that it's educational and it's helping them move forward in what they're doing in school. An example recently was we had high school students come in. They actually were led by a writing teacher and one of our a research resident who was working here with prison records. And they came in to learn about the prison records and to learn more about our holdings. It was a small group, and we ended up all really having a good time. We really enjoyed them, and it appeared as if they enjoyed visiting with us as well. Fort Plain 8th graders came in last year as well. This was English and the librarian and social studies teacher. They came in because they were working on immigration and urbanization, and so we were able to work with them using documents that related to actually literature that they were using in the classroom. And then we also incorporated or collaborated with the State Museum so that the State Museum had 2 stations that they went through and we had 1. Same thing happened with another group. However, the teacher came in first and developed a graphic organizer for the visit, which, oh my goodness, talked to us first, developed this organization, and we collaborated with the state library and the museum on this particular program, and it worked out great. We also have teacher training. We have done it on site. During superintendent days, which are training days for the schools, school districts may come in, and recently, or actually it was a little while ago, we had a whole social studies department come in, and we spent 2 hours with them going over our resources and how to use them and how to do research. But we also, if there's a call, I will go out to the schools and do professional development training in the school. Conferences, again, is where we meet them as well. Any kind of other opportunity that comes up, usually we're ready to go. I generally always try to make sure that I present with a teacher, as they had long ago requested. Make sure that it's someone who knows our resources. We always try to have a hands-on workshop with resources that teachers have helped us develop. And then we also, everything we're sharing has actually been piloted in the classroom by a teacher prior to being finalized. We have our Student Research Award program. This is where the students actually come in more directly with us and into contact. And this has been going on since 1991. We have a July 1st deadline. We had a June 1st at first, but then the teachers, we finally said, what the heck, is that deadline good for you? No, it's too busy. So we were able to push it back to July 1st, and it's worked out for everybody. But again, their input helped us with that. The reason is for the award is to get students out there in the communities, see what records are there, see who has them, meet them, create projects that they really want to work on. We're very flexible with projects, papers or performances, exhibits, websites, documentaries. We even have an other, so they can propose something. It's funded with state funds as well as some private funds, set up by a former member of the Board of Regents, which oversees oversees education in New York State. The poster is printed and gets distributed by mail, sort of the old-fashioned way. We found that we tried once and didn't do a poster, set everything up digitally, did not work at all. So we realized we really have to do this poster. Marketing is the poster and press releases. The participation varies. This program requires that students actually use historical records. Sometimes, or basically a whole lot of people, students, really, we find, aren't going to take that extra time to go find those records and use them. They'd rather go to the library, use secondary sources. So what happens is that extra effort means that our numbers are lower. We're generally anywhere between 60 to 300 students participating. But some of the projects are just fantastic. It's great. And we know these students really did go the extra mile to go out there and find these documents to support their research. Judging is done by teachers and archivists, and it's done over the summer. And then we have awards that are given in, on Archives Week. And I will talk a little bit about that in a second. Collaboration, we have the teachers who are advising and mentoring students on how to do this. They also help us with judging. They also, oh my goodness, are invaluable with program review and feedback. And then we have the students and sometimes their teachers as well working with their local repositories to help students find those documents to support their work. Grants, this is a program for local government records management. And after about in the second year, they introduced the educational use of local government records grants. So, and you can see here $304 million spent. These grants have been fantastic. They're interdisciplinary because local governments out there are interdisciplinary themselves. They have records for all different topics. We have been most successful with teacher training grants, and literally thousands of teachers have been trained to locate records, work with records managers and curators and archivists to find documents. They've been trained how to develop learning activities. We've also found it's been one of the best ways to identify individual teachers for us to use for projects that we're doing in-house. They just rise to the top, the ones that you go, oh my goodness, those are the ones we want to work with. It's also been a really good way for us to find really rich, teachable documents that are out there in those other organizations that actually might be useful to use with some of our projects and pair with the state records. Some examples include Cattaraugus Soil and Water Conservation District that got science teachers together to do a project. Another was an elementary school that created a nature trail but needed to support it with curriculum materials and used their local county cooperative extension documents. It just goes on and on. It's incredible, the partnerships and collaboration that, in fact, it's sort of with us because we're instigating it all. However, the teachers are going out there and meeting all of these county clerks and village clerks and people who have the records and developing these more long-term relationships, which is really, really nice. And then when they take these projects that they've developed and they start to present them at conferences, it's nice because they will credit the state archives. And in fact, you know, by just supporting them, we in fact benefit as well. Online resources. We have how-to videos, and I've lumped publications under here, mostly because they are available as PDFs now on our website. We've got a new, one of our mainstay publications, Consider the Source, Historical Records in the Classroom. We are revising and updating that and hope to have that new version online as well. And then the next publication that we're going to actually convert to digital will be Erie Canal, New York's Gift to the Nation. So we'll be working on that very, very soon. And one of the things that we really try to emphasize with everything that we do is that we're trying to empower teachers and even students, if they look at this material, anyone who looks at it, to develop the skills that they need to go out and collect and research and do this work on their own and develop materials for their own purpose, own use. The how-to videos are on our website and also on our YouTube channel, and we collaborate with a college professor of education at a local college near, right up the road, matter of fact, who actually was originally trained in one of our grant projects long ago. So we benefit, it all comes back around. And she is featured in our how-to videos. We also have 3 videos on how to go out and do research in a county clerk's office, a town clerk's office, and a historical organization. We've gotten some wonderful feedback on the videos, and I encourage you to take a look. We're hoping they're fun, full of energy, and informative. We think they're fun. We also have document projects, and our first online project was Global History and Geography visual website, and that was done in 2000. And since then, we've had Erie Canal Time Machine, a Legacies project about Chinese and Latino histories in 5 cities in New York throughout the ages, La Escuela Electronica, which is a bilingual site, Spanish and English, Remembering World War I. In-house with a teacher, we produced some document showcases that are based on different themes. And then now what we're developing and have yet to be put online are primary source sets about different topics that teachers have actually requested. And they've requested these to be document sets. I must say, if you go onto our website, you're going to see the beginnings of our new website, but know that it actually right now is totally in transition, and would hope that you'd come back and see some of what we have. If you're interested to see what our primary source sets look like, if you email at me, I can actually give you a Google site address, and you can take a peek at what the new material looks like. It's more inquiries and case studies, a little bit different. Basically, everything I just mentioned couldn't have been done without collaboration with teachers. They were hired as education consultants, as lesson writers, as presenters at different conferences, promoting this and piloting this material. Everything really falls back to them, and really they are, I think, our key to success. I also want to quickly just tell you that we do reward excellence, and when I say excellence, it really is collaborations. In every one of these pictures that you see, what you're seeing are students that were collaborating with repositories, either for our Student Research Award program, and in doing that, they've met village historians and county clerks and Park Service personnel. They've been everywhere doing research. And so all of a sudden, it just dawned on me that, yes, we're giving them excellence for an award for their wonderful project, but that it really does all represent collaborations along the way to get them there. And I just wanted to talk just for a minute about the challenges for cooperation. I think basically, I mentioned it earlier too, communication is tough. It's really, really difficult to identify, to find these teachers who have the energy and enthusiasm to work with you on a project. When you find them, they're fantastic. But it takes a little bit of time because not all teachers, unfortunately, want to use historical records. You look at them and think, really, you have no interest. But in fact, they have a different favorite thing that they do. And so you've got to find the teachers who really do want to delve into this. They find a fascination with it, and then you can find these collaborations that will just benefit everyone so much. One of the things that we found too with teachers is that we had to find teachers who could actually think beyond their own classrooms, because they had a tendency to actually be developing materials that were really very, very focused on their own classroom and the way that they teach. And we needed to find teachers that could think more broadly about the profession and how, a variety of different people might teach. And that's one thing that led us to developing what we have online, which is a way to customize a lesson, so that each of the items or images that you select online will come up with, unfortunately, the old-fashioned term of worksheet. But we couldn't find anything shorter that everyone would understand. And anyways, a teacher-developed lesson will be in there, and you have the option of going in there and editing it, taking it right out, or just taking the document, or editing it down to what you want, and then printing it out and using it. And we have found actually the huge positive response from special education teachers who have such a variety of students in their classroom working at such different levels. So they can have the same document and each will have their own questions based on their reading level and that sort of thing. So it's worked out well. And it has helped us address the fact that, you know, most teachers won't use other teachers' lessons, but they definitely want the ideas that they can glean from them and then develop their own. So we're trying to make it so that everybody's benefiting from this. And I think that our model of always presenting with a teacher has really, really helped us convey to that profession the importance that we feel of the use of these primary sources in their classrooms, and also the fact that most of us in the profession are there to help them. And it's just worked out really, really well. And I just want to say the benefits have been for us in these collaborations. We get the word out about the New York State Archives and what we're doing, but we also can, again, align with the standards and assessments, make sure that things are appropriate for the students that we're trying to reach or develop materials for, make sure that everything's current. Things have changed recently in the past like 7 or 8 years, a lot in the classroom. So by working with the teachers, we can hopefully keep up with that. We also want to make sure everything we develop is piloted in the classrooms so that we know it works. If it doesn't, we need to tweak it and fix it before we distribute it. And it also gives us the sense that we know that the materials are likely to be used. Also, we learn a lot. I often get a lot of help from colleagues in conducting the Student Research Award program, in the site visits, all sorts of ways they help with education. And we all learn something from the teachers and from the students about what's going on in the classroom, what are the teaching strategies, concepts, vocabulary. Vocabulary is huge because it changes so fast in education. And then the students and the teachers learn how to find and use the documents, and they understand why they're important to preserve. And in fact, they are the best advocates for us for records management out in their communities. And in many cases, because of the local government grants, teachers involved with grant projects have in fact advocated on behalf of those grants to local governments to see about them getting involved to do records management. So the collaborations are a huge win, and I can't say enough about it. Thank you.
Hello there. Thank you, Julie. That was wonderful. And so we don't duplicate. Julie and I had a long conversation in advance of this webinar and found that we had many similarities between our two institutions and in the ways we approached programming. So I will be sure to not duplicate what Julie has said. So I work for the Library of Virginia, and I've been here for actually a fairly short time, about 2 years, but the education program dates back several years. The library, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Commonwealth or who have never been, was actually created by the General Assembly in 1823, and we are both the state library and the state archive. So we are a public library, but a little bit different than the public library that sometimes folks assume that we are. We are open Monday through Saturday from 9 to 5, and we have about 120 staff members. Sort of at the height of the library's employment, there were close to 200 staff members, but over the years, departments have evolved and shrunk. And my department, which is Education and Outreach, has 7 members and there are two of us, myself and my colleague, who work specifically on education with K-12 schools. One of the things that I like to tell groups when they come in, especially children, is that the library has over 123 million items, and so children often just can't even wrap their heads around that number because it's so large. So what we like to say, as you'll see there on the PowerPoint, is that if you were to take the archival shelves, which occupy 2 floors of our building, and stretch them out end to end, they would go 55 miles from Fredericksburg to Richmond, or from Richmond to Williamsburg. And students are always fascinated by that description. So as I said, we are a public library, just not a local public library. And so the vast majority of our collection is nonfiction and is related to Virginia's history and culture. Therefore, it's probably not that surprising that about 60% of the folks who come to the library come to do some sort of genealogical research, whether that's family history, local history, research for a scholarly publication, etc. But another sort of core audience of ours at the library is the education community. And we engage with this audience in a variety of ways. Over the years, we've done tours and programs at the library for the K-12 community. Like Julie had mentioned earlier, we tend to work directly with teachers when a request comes in. Oftentimes, groups will go through our current exhibition. Older students might take a tour of our second floor, which is where our reading rooms are, to learn about the research process. Teachers are always asking for instruction on how to really get students to understand the difference between primary and secondary sources. And so a lot of our tours and programs focus on that. We also have a program called Collect, Protect, and Serve, which basically is used for middle and upper elementary school, in which students learn what is a primary source, what is a secondary source. They also learn the difference between an archivist and a librarian, which most students are unfamiliar with. They learn a little bit of transcription, so how do they make sense of 200- or 300-year-old documents? And they also learn about preservation and conservation, which is a big part of what being the State Library and Archive is all about. How do we protect these documents that tell the story of the history of Virginia from what we call in this program the archival bad guys, you know, light, mold, mildew, water, etc. So like Julie, we have a sort of brand new education website, which I've got for you up there, and it's actually a work in progress. We have 3 websites, but folks had been telling us over the years that it was sometimes pretty difficult to find things on our website. So for educators, we're really trying to move things into one place that's easily accessible for them. But like Julie mentioned earlier, we're a very small department. There's a limit to the amount of programming we can do both at the library and even outreach programming. And so because of the limited staff and the nature of our facility, much of our work has been with teachers and media specialists for the schools. Our online resources for educators and students are the result of our long-standing collaborations with teachers. And beginning in 2009, we were fortunate to get the Ann and Ryland Brown Teacher Enrichment Fund, which supports 2 programs at the library, a Teacher Institute and a Teacher Research Fellowship. And so basically, we have an annual Teacher Institute in which teachers explore how to use primary sources to enhance student learning in their classrooms. They learn about new digital resources. And when they leave the Institute, they take away a toolbox of learning objects that are student-centered but have a variety of uses for varied audiences. Teachers earn recertification points when they attend the workshop. We also have a Brown Teacher Research Fellowship, and so over the course of 2 weeks during the summer, 1 or 2 teachers will come in and work with Library of Virginia staff members, not only with the education department, but also with the reference and archival staff members. And they'll pursue research in Virginia history. And what they will do is produce some sort of online educational resource that not only they can take back to the classroom, but they can share with teachers across the Commonwealth and beyond. And so I want to talk a little bit about our latest initiative, which has sort of been in the works for a few years in conversations with teachers and educators during a series of focus groups that we held, and in conversations with the Virginia Department of Education. We're constantly asking, our constituents, what is it you need from us? How are we best serving, your needs as an educator? And what folks told us over and over was, your website has some great lesson plans that I might have done as a Brown Fellow one year or that I've used. And you have great primary resources at the Library of Virginia, but you have several websites, and it oftentimes is a little bit difficult for me to find a primary source easily that I can integrate into a lesson plan I'm using in the classroom. And if I find the primary source that I was looking for, it often doesn't come with any context. The title doesn't necessarily tell me anything about it. And if it's a handwritten document, it usually does not have a transcription. And, I have a limited time as an educator, and it would be really nice if you could sort of come up with something that would answer a lot of those questions. And so that's where we came up with Document Bank of Virginia, which is our newest initiative that was launched in July of this past year. So basically what we've done with Document Bank is we've taken sort of key primary sources from our collections, and we've put them into an easily accessible database where teachers and students in less than 3 clicks can get to a primary source from our collections. They can search by historic era, and these historic eras align with the national history standards. Virginia is one of the few states in the nation that is not Common Core, so we know from analytics and statistics that a lot of people that use our resources do so from outside the state of Virginia, so we decided to align with the national history standards, as well as providing Virginia standards of learning for teachers. So you can search by era, you can search by theme, you can also just do a keyword search. So if you're a teacher and you want to see what we have on Thomas Jefferson, you can go ahead and type him in. Or if you have a Virginia SOL that you want to put in to search to see what documents we have, you can do it that way. So when we launched in July of 2015, we did so with about 125 documents, and these documents connect our collection items to both National History Standards and Virginia SOLs. They also move away from what had been sort of our previous online activity, which was full lesson plans, into documents that sort of speak to activities and information that are really good for small group or for independent work. And many of our documents are actually written by teachers or by former teachers, and many of them are written by students who are studying to become teachers. We've been really fortunate that besides our Brown research fellows writing documents for us, we've got a core of volunteers and interns. We have a former art teacher who's writing for us, as well as a few soon-to-be teachers who are graduating from university. And so this is a really good chance for them to refamiliarize, if they need to themselves, with the SOLs, and then to really critically look at our collections and think about documents that really hit on multiple standards of learning. One of the things that's great about Document Bank is that it's fully mobile responsive. And so one of the things that teachers told us was that in many classrooms, students not only have smartphones, but they also use tablets, they use laptops. this day is changing in terms of how we view information, and so this site works on mobile devices as well as desktop computers. Another sort of concern that we addressed when we created Document Bank was that we have a lot of places in Virginia that are very rural, and folks don't have access to high-speed internet, and teachers said to us, you know, I can't try and download an image that's 6 megs or 8 megs. I just won't be able to do it where I am. And so, you know, can you help me with that? So basically, our document images are available in 2 formats. One is a small thumbnail, and then another is in PDF. And so basically, teachers can either download this or display this in their classroom. And this work couldn't have been done without really a collaboration not only with teachers, but also within departments at the library. We had archivists who sent us materials. We had photo services who helped us get images for things. IT helped us set up this entire site. And so it really was a collaborative effort both within the library and beyond. So when you get to, in less than 3 clicks, your document, it's going to have several different components on the page. And so at the top, you're going to have a title, which is basically, I think, simplifying these sometimes very long archival titles into something that makes a little bit more sense for a teacher. So it'll be sort of a who, what, when. What we also have are 1 to 3 paragraphs of context. So what is this document? Give me a few sentences on what it's about, and what is the larger theme or era that this document ties into. It also has a citation, so if you want to go to the collection and find the original, you can. It has the original thumbnail in PDF, which we talked about. The eras and themes, the tags are clickable, so you can find related documents that way. But one of the things that we've gotten a lot of positive response about is this section at the bottom called Suggested Questions. And these are really questions and activities that can be teacher or student selected. They're designed to be completed as small group or individual activities. And sometimes they link to further sources to provide more examples. And so I just wanted to talk just for a minute about a couple of the categories to give you a sense of what Document Bank is all about. So one of the categories for these suggested questions is analyze. So it's something that's pretty straightforward. One of them is called In Their Shoes, where we ask students to put themselves at the scene of this event or in this person's life and to report on it or write their reaction to what they're reading. One category is artistic exploration, which for students in lower grades or students whose English might not be their first language or just to use in classes other than, you know, social studies in English can be really interesting. We've got another category called social media spin, where we ask students to tweet about this document. And teachers have said that is a really challenging activity, which we didn't think about, I think, when we created the category, because students in 140 characters have to get to the main point of a document, and that sometimes can be a pretty big challenge. So this July, Document Bank will be a year old. We did extensive surveying at teacher conferences this past fall, and this coming fall we will be doing the same thing. Again, having teachers test Document Bank, give us feedback on features that they like, that they don't like, what they wish was there but it's not. The one consistent response we got from the fall surveying was that teachers would really like to have related documents listed at the bottom of each document. Say, you know, if you like this document, here are 2 others, so that they can easily incorporate a group of documents into a lesson plan that they're doing in their classroom. Another online resource I wanted to talk about briefly that teachers and students have really taken to that wasn't initially designed for them is something called Making History Transcribe. And this is basically a crowdsourced transcription project where we are asking the public to help us transcribe our documents. It was launched in August of 2014, and to date, they have transcribed over 16,000 pages. If you take a look, you can see that we have over 180 active users. Not only has the library sort of been hosting a Transcribe-a-thon on the last Saturday of every month for volunteer groups and other adult organizations, but some groups have actually asked to host their own Transcribe-a-thons, and this is where the education and the students come in. So scout groups and schools have contacted us and said, can you come out here and help us set up our own Transcribe-a-thon? Our most recent example was a high school in Williamsburg, Virginia, where 30 11th and 12th graders showed up and stayed about an hour and a half. They worked at small tables on individual laptops that were provided by their school, and the session was held in the school library. It was facilitated by someone from our institution. The students felt like the small tables really facilitated sharing about the stories that they were uncovering. Students were reading sections aloud to each other and discussing sort of what they were reading and what the words meant, and they helped each other with difficult words. And so that's a project that has really become quite of interest to the education community, and in fact it's celebrating its 2-year anniversary this coming August. I wanted to move away from online resources and talk to you a little bit about some programming that we do with the K-12 community. We have 2 signature annual programs, Strong Men and Women in Virginia History and Virginia Women in History. And I want to mention that both would not be possible without outside funding. So when you're thinking about collaborations with K-12 schools and any projects or programs that you might want to try, think about exploring outside funding. Our Strong Men and Women program honors 8 outstanding African American men and women in Virginia history, and the program itself has several parts. Every spring, we ask schools to nominate someone, usually from their community, that they think is deserving of this award. And oftentimes an entire class or a few students from a class will research an individual and then submit an online nomination. Over the summer, our staff works on choosing 8 honorees. And in the fall, we run a student essay contest that the Virginia Department of Education helps us promote, where we ask students to write an essay on one of the honorees. We also mail posters and educational resources to all schools in Virginia every year with not only the images of the honorees, but also biographies of their lives. And then we have a culminating program for the Strong Men and Women program. It's in February. Not only are the honorees honored, but the winning students read their essays aloud, and the schools and the students are recognized and rewarded. I just know from attending the program that it is amazing that the audience seems to enjoy the students reading their essays aloud almost as much, if not more, than actually seeing these sometimes pretty well-known figures being honored. We also travel and exhibit throughout the Commonwealth, and so this goes to local public libraries and local schools, and it travels throughout the year. We similarly run a Virginia Women in History program, and due to time restraints, I won't go into too much detail, but it runs in much the same format as the Strong Men and Women. And I wanted to leave you with a little bit of sort of food for thought. I think that some of the resources and programs that I've discussed and that Julie had talked about, maybe that might require more resources than you have available at the moment. Maybe you're just sort of thinking about ways you can collaborate with the K-12 community. So I wanted to point out another type of collaboration that doesn't require as much time or dedicated staff or funding. And this is the example we have of Anne Westrick, and she wrote this novel that you can see here called Brotherhood. Anne was a regular to our library doing research. The archivist actually probably knew Anne long before my colleague and I in the education department ever met her. I met her at an education conference 2 years ago, and she was promoting her novel, Brotherhood, which had just been published and received awards. and it looked at Richmond in the post-Civil War period. And mentioned that, you know, she had done much of her research here at the library. And, you know, we got to talking and you know, we found out that separately she had been going to schools and doing workshops based on her book. And my colleague and I had been working with some of the same schools doing outreach programs related to her book and more specifically the primary sources that she used to write it. So as it turned out, 2 years ago, we were doing an exhibition that dealt with the Reconstruction period. And so I said to Anne, I said, would you and one of the teachers we've worked with be willing to participate in our Teachers Institute to basically give a talk or do a session? And she said, sure. And so she came and the workshop was a great success. And so, you know, just as sort of food for thought, perhaps there's someone who regularly comes to do research at your library or archive, and you just really never know when an opportunity to collaborate might present itself. So I hope that the resources and programs that Julie and I have shared sort of give you a sense of the types of educational collaborations that have taken place over the years at both of our institutions. The collaborations have allowed us to become a place that teachers and students go to learn about the history of both Virginia and New York and its people. And so I'll wrap it up for here and I think open it up for questions if we have any time.
Thanks, Catherine and Julie. We'll see if there's any questions. If you've got a question, you can type it in the Q&A on the website. I've got a question for Julie, if you can hear me, Julie. You mentioned collaboration and getting the right teachers that are you know, right for the project. Do you have any suggestions for how to go about targeting or finding those teachers? That's something that we've struggled with here on our end. Is, you know, a lot of them are interested, but they just don't have the time or whatever. So, I mean, how do you go about finding them?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I think it's one of the most, it's the hardest thing about all of this is finding the right people for the right task. And one thing that I think helps is actually going out there and going to their local professional development, maybe even if it's really specifically just teachers, see if you can't also join them. Find out who's presenting, where do they teach, what do they teach, who's participating, and schmooze. And then sometimes you'll find that somebody just pops out and you see that they've got the energy and the enthusiasm that you're looking for. And in many cases, it doesn't even matter if they've got any experience. It's do they have that energy and enthusiasm to work with you and to follow through. I know one time we were looking, we needed 2 elementary school teachers for a focus group. And I was like, I tapped out everything to try to find 2. And a principal from a school called about something totally different. She might have even had the wrong number. I don't know. But she called and I just said, hey, let me tell you what we're doing. Do you have 2 teachers? And she just said, oh, my goodness, I know exactly who to send you. And it was just one of those things that happened, but she knew exactly what I was talking about that energy and the enthusiasm. And it worked out great. So a lot of this is sort of hit or miss. It's also being out there and talking and observing this profession group. I know that we have the New York State Council for the Social Studies, and they have local councils That's another way to find teachers, is to go through whatever local council you might have. And also it might be, you know, if you're looking for a librarian, you could go through their local council. A science teacher, same thing. Doesn't always have to be history. But it's difficult. It's difficult.
Thanks. That helps. There's a question in the question box there, and it says, Julie, you mentioned you hired teachers to assist. What kind of money were you talking about?
Well, it varies. It'll all be even, so everyone gets the same amount, but I must say we pay far less than what they can get if they're doing professional development or curriculum writing through their school. The last time we hired them for some of our new resources, we actually paid them basically $50 a lesson. A lot of the text and historical background we already had, and they had the choice of using that or creating their own if they wanted to. So there were some components that were almost done, so they didn't have to do full-blown research if they didn't care to. But really, $50 is nothing. And I, in some ways, was embarrassed, but that's all our budget would cover. Others, the teachers who really like to do this, often will tell me, you don't need to pay me, I just want to be a part of the project. They're few and far between, but there are some out there that will say that. And if that happens,
or they just want to, or they just want free lunch sometimes. Do you find that, Julie?
I was just getting ready to say that. Or you feed them well.
Yes, yes. Teachers more than anyone else appreciate free lunches, I've found. But yeah, just to echo some of what Julie said, I think that most states have affiliation with a National Council for Social Studies. I know in Virginia we do, and I think Julie just mentioned in New York that you do. But organizations like that, as well as if you have a state organization of school librarians, I know that we do here in Virginia, as well as your Department of Education, I found that those are some of the easiest conduits into the teacher community, as well as the schools of education at your local universities. But you know, as far as reaching out to teachers, we found that those avenues are really successful.
We've even gotten some from a colleague who sings in a church choir, and and they were singing with someone who was a library media specialist and had been in Iowa and Connecticut, and suddenly she's hired, and she was fantastic. But we got to her through a church choir. It's I guess have to keep your eyes and your ears open and see when the opportunity presents itself to, you know, inquire about somebody.
And somebody else in the chat asked about the scalability issue, and I think that that's a really important one, especially in times like this. I know that a lot of institutions like ours, unfortunately, education and outreach is often a department that can, you know, be seen as expendable. But I know that what we've done is really try and think about little things we can do, like the example I gave of just, you know, talking to regulars who are coming in to, you know, use your resources. You never know. Those people are there because they love history or education or some component of that, and you know, they might be willing to do a program like as we had in our example. But also too, I think some of these lower impact programs that you can do either on site or outreach, they don't usually cost money. What they are is staff time, but I think that, you know, there are some that you can do that are pretty low impact, and that I think that the groups get a lot out of, you know, especially when we can reach K-12 students. We're sort of exposing the next generation to institutions like ours, and trying to get them interested in these resources that are available to them.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in either the Q&A or the the chat.
I'd also just like to say that I think probably both Catherine and I, or at least I can speak for myself, but I would assume Catherine as well would take emails from people if they have something pops up in a week or two even. Just email and we can start some conversations.
Yes, definitely. That's excellent, Julie. And I know Julie and I are we've already got the wheels turning for some possible collaborations in the future. So you will find that people in education love to collaborate. So we are welcome to any future communications.
Sounds great. Thank you. I've got like 2 pages full of notes, so I'm very excited. I think I'm supposed to turn it over to Anne, and she will wrap it up for us.
Thanks a lot, Shelley, and thank you, Julie and Catherine. What a wonderful presentation. This is Ann Ackerson at CoSA, and I'm going to just take you out the last few slides as we wind down. I realize we're a little over time, so some of you may be on your way to leave, but I did want to just give you a heads up about what's coming up in the next couple of months. We've got some great webinars happening. Thursday, July 28th, that's our next monthly member webinar, archival documentation with communities of color and marginalized communities. I think this is going to be a really exciting conversation, so I hope that you come back and join us for that webinar. That's on Thursday, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see some of you in Atlanta at the end of July and early August at the CoSA SAA Joint Annual Meeting. And then we'll be back again with our monthly member webinar in August to just do a wrap-up of the annual meeting and talk about outcomes, how CoSA moves forward from what we've heard at the annual meeting. So that'll be good for all of those of you who won't be able to join us in Atlanta. It's always a great wrap-up to kind of talk about and reflect what all went on at the annual meeting. Thursday, September 22nd will be our second SHREB Town Hall. We hold 2 SHREB Town Halls each year, and so this will be the second one of the year. And then in October, we're going to be talking about collaborative History Day projects. And October is our last monthly webinar for the year. I don't want to let anybody leave this webinar without knowing that there are scholarship funds available through the State Electronic Records Initiative. These are funds to be used to do training, electronic records management training, and digital preservation training. Each state and territory has up to $1,000 available to it. If you haven't taken advantage yet, please do so, and you can do so by contacting Sarah Kuntz at the email address in the last bullet point. These are really popular, and it's a great way to kind of spread your training dollars. We have the money available. Take advantage of it. Also, as part of the CERI program, there are still seats available for AIM training. And again, it's a matter of contacting, in this instance, Sarah Grimm at wisconsinhistory.org to find out more about that. But this is at no cost to you. Again, the CERI project is handling the registrations for this and underwriting all of that. And you can see there are 4 training opportunities that CERI will underwrite. So we hope that, again, if you haven't taken advantage or you know staff in your institution who want to take advantage of AIM training, this is the opportunity. Every year we rely upon the generosity of our corporate sponsors to help us with programming of all different types within CoSA. And so we just want to shout out today to Ancestry, Family Search, Preservica, Apex Software, and Gaylord Archival, and our 2 federal funders, the NHPRC and the IMLS. Thank you.